My daughter took 2 suitcases and disappeared one night after she found a small bag of drugs in her nightstand. And when I asked her about it, she looked at me and whispered, "I can't go back, or he will hurt me." I just stood there frozen in the hallway. That was 4 years ago. And yesterday, I saw her face on a news report from LA, talking about girls in the intimacy business, and my heart shattered again. I mean, how do you even begin to handle something like that as a parent? How do you watch your child's life fall apart in front of you? Lynn, my youngest daughter, was always full of light. She used to be the happiest kid, never complained about anything, unlike her older brother Joshua. But things started changing when she got to high school around freshman year. She began wearing more makeup, less clothes. And whenever I asked her about it, she would snap at me yelling about how it was her body, and she could do what she wanted. Or saying stuff like, "Mom, everyone else is doing it." It was hard to watch because I saw this sweet, innocent girl trying so hard to become something she thought made her grown up. I always tried to tell her that being a woman isn't about following trends or showing skin that she should be proud of who she was. But she didn't listen. I believed in giving her space, so I thought maybe it was just a phase. But our bond got weaker. Arguments started popping up over small things, and then they turned into screaming fights. She began bringing boys home. Some looked like they were way older than her, and I barely got to see their faces. And one day, I just lost it. I was looking through her room, trying to find something she had taken from me, and I saw a tiny white bag hidden behind her lamp. I had done some wild stuff back in college, so I knew exactly what it was when she got home. We had the biggest fight. She screamed, I screamed, and by the next morning, she was gone. I checked her room and found out she had taken 2 suitcases from my closet and vanished. I called the police right away, and I kept thinking, how could Lynn, my sweet baby, just leave me, the one who loves her more than anyone else in the world? I drove around our small town for hours, calling out her name, searching every street corner. The police couldn't find her either, and that was it. She was just gone 4 years past without a single word. Then one day, one of her old friend's mom sent me a post on Instagram. It was a video clip from a news report, and I could tell it was Lynn. At first, I didn't get why she was on the news, but then I saw the headline talking about intimacy workers in the south side of LA. My heart dropped. I watched her in that clip, and she looked completely out of it, like she was drugged and lost, and the tears just wouldn't stop falling from my eyes. I was sitting in my room, watching my own daughter spiral, and I couldn't do anything about it. The news said it was filmed in Los Angeles, and I was living in a quiet town in Texas. After a couple of days, I couldn't take it anymore. I booked a flight to LA and rented a car, and I drove through the south side every single day, picking random streets, driving all the way down, crossing to the next block, and doing it again. I knew the chances were slim, but I had to try. The police hadn't helped me back then, and I didn't think they would. Now then, one day, something crazy happened. I was in a broken-down area when I saw a girl with features just like Lynn. I rolled down the window and called her name, and she turned, and it was her. My little girl was standing right there. I jumped out of the car and ran, and she ran to me shouting, "Mom! Mom!" And we hugged like we hadn't seen each other in decades. We cried and held on to each other for dear life. I took her to grab some food and thought maybe we'd talk and reconnect, but she was so quiet, her eyes dull. She didn't really show any emotion. It felt like I was sitting with a ghost, and I wasn't sure if it was because of the drugs or just everything she had been through. Near the end of the meal, she finally spoke a little. But when we got up to leave, I went to the car, and she didn't follow. She just stood there. And when I asked her what was going on, she came closer and told me something that broke my heart. "I can't come with you. They'll find me and hurt me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her we had to go and that I would protect her, but she said they were watching and already warned her, without me even noticing while we were eating. I told her not to move while I called the police. And while I was on the phone, I saw her eyes dart to something far away. She looked back at me, hugged me tight, and whispered, "I love you, Mom, but I'm sorry." And then she ran. She ran so fast I couldn't even move. I just stood there crying, feeling like the biggest failure in the world. I had her right in front of me, and I still couldn't save her. I couldn't protect her from whatever danger she was in. I couldn't bring her home. I didn't go back to Texas. I couldn't, not without her. I couldn't bear the thought of telling Joshua and everyone else that I had found Lynn, only to lose her again. So I checked into a cheap motel near where I saw her. Last, the place was tiny water stains on the ceiling, only a few working channels on the TV, but it became my base. I drove through the same neighborhoods every day, showing her photo to anyone who would look. Most people ignored me, but now and then someone would say, "Yeah, I've seen her," or they'd say, "She's one of Victor's girls." A lady selling flowers told me that and warned me that I needed to be careful because Victor doesn't like people messing with his business, that name. Victor chilled me to the bone, but I couldn't give up, not now. After everything, it took 3 weeks before I found Amber, a young woman sitting on a bench who recognized Lynn immediately. When I showed her the photo, she said she goes by Stardust now, and I felt sick. Victor gave all the girls fake names, made them forget who they used to be. We went into a laundromat to talk with the sound of machines spinning around us, and she told me her story. She had escaped Victor 6 months ago, but still lived in fear. She said he had connections to police and judges and businessmen, like the whole system was working with him, and her voice was calm, like she had accepted it, but to me it was terrifying. I begged her to help me find Lynn. She paused, then wrote down an address on a crumpled receipt and said, "Go to this shelter. Ask for Desiree. Tell her Amber sent you. She might be able to help." She pressed the paper into my hand and warned me again. "Be careful. Victor has eyes everywhere." The shelter was in an old warehouse. Nothing fancy, just a plain building with a camera and a small sign that read, "Women's Resource Center." I pressed the intercom button, heart pounding, as I waited for a response. Desiree turned out to be a former social worker with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She led me through a common area where women of various ages sat talking, reading, or simply staring into space, their expressions ranging from hopeful to defeated. "I know Lynn," she confirmed after I explained who I was. "She's come here a few times when things got bad, but she always goes back." The substances have a strong hold on her, and so does Victor. Desiree's office was small but organized with filing cabinets lining one wall and a desk covered in paperwork photos of women smiling, healthy, clearly recovered. Decorated a bulletin board behind her chair. Silent testimonials to the possibility of change. Desiree agreed to get a message to Lynn, but warned me not to get my hopes up. Girls in her situation, they're afraid to hope for anything better. Victor convinces them they're worthless, that no one else would want them. She explained the psychological tactics pimps use: isolation, degradation, intermittent rewards. Threats painting a picture of manipulation so comprehensive, it made my head spin. It's not just the physical control, she said, her voice softening slightly. It's the way they get inside these girls' heads. Sometimes stories like this feel overwhelming. But if you're still with me right now, it means you care, and that matters. Take a second to support voices that break silence, stories that deserve to be heard. Every view and share makes a difference in someone's reality. 2 days later, my phone rang at 3 a.m. I lunged for it, nearly knocking it off the nightstand. In my haste, Mom Lynn's voice was small, tentative. "Are you really here in LA?" The sound of her voice, so familiar yet changed, brought tears to my eyes. We arranged to meet at a 24-hour diner, far from Victor's territory. I arrived an hour early, scanning every face, jumping at every sound. The waitress, noticing my anxiety, kept my coffee cup filled and asked no questions when Lynn finally walked in. My heart broke all over again. She was thinner than before, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous twitch in her hands. But she was there. She slid into the booth across from me, her movements cautious, as if she might flee at any moment. We sat in a corner booth, both of us too emotional to eat the pancakes I'd ordered. The syrup congealed as we talked, the food growing cold between us. "I want to help you," I said, reaching for her hand across the table. "Lynn, let me take you home." Her fingers were ice cold in mine, her nails bitten to the quick. She pulled her hand away, glancing anxiously toward the door. "You don't understand. Victor owns me now, the things I've done, the substances I've taken. I'm not that girl from Texas anymore." Her voice cracked on the word Texas, as if the very thought of home was painful. I leaned forward, my voice fierce with maternal determination. "You will always be my daughter. Nothing you've done changes that we can get you help, protection." I outlined a plan: rehab therapy, a fresh start in a new place where Victor couldn't find her for a moment. Hope flickered in her eyes. Then the bell above the diner door jingled, and Lynn's face drained of color. A tall man with a shaved head and cold eyes had entered, scanning the restaurant until his gaze landed on our table. He wore an expensive leather jacket despite the warm night, his fingers adorned with heavy gold rings that caught the light as he moved. "That's Marcus," Lynn whispered, shrinking in her seat. "He works for Victor, handles the girls who try to leave the—" Word handles hung between us, loaded with implied violence. I reached for my phone, but Lynn grabbed my wrist. "Don't! He'll hurt you. Just let me handle this." Before I could stop her, she slid out of the booth and approached Marcus. Her body language completely transformed. Shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, submissive. The confident girl who had once captained her middle school debate team now moved like a struck animal expecting punishment. They spoke briefly, his hand gripping her arm with obvious force. I could see his fingers digging into her skin, leaving white marks that would surely bruise. Then Lynn returned to our table, her movements jerky with fear. "I have to go," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Victor knows I'm here. If I don't go back now, he'll—" She swallowed hard, unable to finish the sentence. "Just go home. Mom, please forget about me." The defeat in her voice was almost as painful as the words themselves. I stood up, desperate. "I'm not leaving without you. We'll go to the police, get protection." Lynn cut me off with a bitter laugh. "The police? Victor has cops on his payroll. Why do you think they never found me? Why do you think they can't shut down his operation?" She glanced nervously at Marcus, who was watching us from near the door. His posture relaxed, but his eyes alert and predatory. "I have to go. He's getting impatient." I couldn't let her leave, not again in desperation. I blurted out, "I'll pay whatever Victor wants for you. I'll pay it." The words came out before I could think them through, fueled by a primal need to protect my child at any cost. Lynn's eyes widened in shock, then softened with a sadness that seemed to age her beyond her years. "Oh, Mom, that's not how this works. I'm not for sale because he never really bought me. He trapped me." The simple truth of her statement hit me like a physical blow. She hugged me quickly, whispering in my ear, "There's a woman named Desiree at a shelter on Willix. If I can get away, that's where I'll go. Wait 3 days, then check there." Her breath was warm against my cheek, her words rushed and urgent. Then she was gone, walking out with Marcus, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I wanted to run after her, to scream, to fight, but I knew that would only put her in more danger. Instead, I did as she asked for 3 agonizing days. I waited, jumping every time my phone rang. Barely sleeping on the 4th day, I returned to the shelter, my heart in my throat. Desiree met me at the door, her expression giving nothing away. "She's here," she said simply, leading me to a small room in the back. And there was Lynn, curled up on a narrow bed, shivering despite the blankets piled on top of her. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen nearly shut, but she was alive with withdrawal. Desiree explained quietly. "She showed up last night, pretty struck up, said she managed to slip away when Victor was distracted with a new girl." The thought of another young woman taking Lynn's place in that nightmare made me sick, but I pushed the feeling aside to focus on my daughter. I rushed to Lynn's side, gathering her trembling body in my arms. She felt so fragile, like a bird with hollow bones. "Mom," she murmured, her voice. "You stayed." The simple statement held volumes: surprise, relief, gratitude. "Of course I stayed," I whispered, stroking her tangled hair. "I'll always stay." I meant it with every fiber of my being, a promise, not just for that moment, but for all the difficult moments to come over the next few days. I rarely left Lynn's side as she fought through the worst of the withdrawal. The shelter had a volunteer doctor who monitored her condition, but resources were limited. Lynn alternated between chills and sweats, her body purging the toxins that had held her captive as surely as Victor had. She cried out in her sleep, sometimes begging unseen tormentors for mercy, other times apologizing for failures. I couldn't imagine I held her through it, all wiping her forehead with cool cloths, helping her sip water when she could keep it down, whispering reassurances. When nightmares gripped her, "Victor will be looking for her," Desiree warned me on the 3rd day. "This place is safe, but not forever. You need to think about your next steps." We sat in the shelter's small kitchen, sharing coffee, while Lynn slept under the watchful eye of a volunteer. He doesn't let his investments go easily, especially not ones as profitable as Lynn. The clinical way she described the situation made my skin crawl, but I understood she was simply being realistic. I knew she was right as Lynn grew stronger. The reality of our situation became clearer. We couldn't go back to Texas. Victor had connections across state lines, and our small town offered no anonymity. We couldn't stay in Los Angeles, where his network was strongest. We needed to disappear, the life we had known, the home we had shared, the community that had watched Lynn grow up. All of it would have to be left behind. It was a devastating realization, but necessary for survival. Through Desiree, I connected with a network that helped trafficking survivors relocate. They arranged new identities for us, driver's licenses, social security cards, credit histories, and found us a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. The process took weeks, during which Lynn slowly regained her strength and began to participate in the shelter's recovery programs. She attended group therapy sessions, her voice growing stronger as she shared her experiences and listened to others. I watched with pride as glimpses of her old self began to emerge. Her quick wit, her compassion, her resilience. "It's not foolproof," the facilitator, a former FBI agent named Rachel, warned us as she handed over our new documentation. "But it's a start. Keep a low profile. Avoid social media, change your appearance. Most importantly, don't contact anyone from your past lives." The stack of papers and cards she gave us represented not just new identities, but a complete severance from everything and everyone we had ever known. I thought of Joshua, who would never know what happened to his sister and mother, and felt a grief so profound it was physical. The night before we were set to leave, Lynn had a panic attack. "What if he finds us?" She gasped between sobs, her whole body shaking. "What if this is all for nothing?" I held her until the storm passed, making promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "We'll be okay," I whispered into her hair. "We'll be together. That's what matters." As I rocked her, I realized that despite everything, I believed those words. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Our new life in Portland was a delicate balance of caution and healing. Lynn dyed her honey blonde hair dark brown and cut it short. I lightened mine and wore glasses I didn't need. We used our new names, Catherine and Emma Reynolds, exclusively, even in private. The apartment was small, but clean, with large windows that let in the Pacific Northwest light. We bought second-hand furniture and thrift store clothes, building a life from scratch with limited resources but unlimited determination. Lynn. Now Emma began therapy with a specialist in trauma and addiction. Some days were better than others. She'd wake up screaming from nightmares, or I'd find her curled in the bathtub shaking with cravings. The wisdom in her words struck me. This daughter of mine had endured horrors I could barely comprehend. Yet here she was, transforming her pain into purpose. For 2 years, we lived in careful anonymity. I worked as a bookkeeper for a local restaurant. Lynn completed her associate's degree and began applying to 4-year colleges. We made a few cautious friendships, but kept mostly to ourselves. Our apartment became a sanctuary filled with books, plants, and the simple comforts we had once taken for granted. We celebrated holidays, quietly creating new traditions to replace the ones we'd left behind. We were building something precious, a life after trauma, a future beyond fear. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, addressed to Catherine Reynolds. No return address. The sight of it in our mailbox sent a chill through me. No one should have known that name. That address inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words. "Victor knows where you are." The handwriting was neat and precise, the message all the more terrifying for its simplicity. The fragile security we'd built crumbled instantly. I called Lynn at school, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Come home. Now pack only what you can carry." We were on a bus to Seattle within hours, leaving behind everything we couldn't fit in our backpacks. From Seattle, we took a train to Chicago, then a series of buses to small towns in the Midwest, zigzagging our way east until we finally settled in a rural community in Vermont. We used cash only worked under the table and changed our names again, becoming Sarah and Jessica Mitchell. The constant movement was exhausting, the perpetual vigilance draining, but the alternative was unthinkable. The pattern repeated itself 18 months later. Another anonymous letter, another frantic escape, another new beginning each time the warning came, just as we were starting to feel secure each time we left with less and traveled farther after the third letter. This one finding us in a coastal town in Maine. Lynn broke down. "This is never going to end, is it?" She sobbed, huddled in the bathroom of yet another motel room. "He's always going to find us. We're going to spend our whole lives running." The despair in her voice mirrored my own growing weariness. I had no comforting lies left to offer. The truth was, I was exhausted, too exhausted, from looking over my shoulder, from starting over, from watching my daughter jump at shadows. "Maybe," I said slowly, an idea forming, "that's exactly what he wants to keep us running. Scared, never settling, never fighting back." Lynn looked up, her tear-stained face, questioning, "What do you mean?" The bathroom light flickered overhead, casting strange shadows across her face. "I mean, what if the letters aren't from Victor at all? What if they're from someone who wants us to keep running?" It was a theory that had been growing in my mind. The timing of the letters was too perfect, always arriving. Just as we were establishing ourselves, just as Lynn was making progress. And why warn us if Victor truly knew where we were? Why not simply come for Lynn? The more I considered it, the more the pattern seemed deliberate, designed to keep us in a state of perpetual fear and instability. We decided to take a risk. Instead of running again, we stayed in Maine and began our own investigation through careful, anonymous inquiries. We learned that Victor's operation had been hit hard by a federal task force shortly after we left Los Angeles. He was serving 20 years in a federal prison. Marcus, his enforcer, had been unalived in a confrontation with police. The organization was in disarray, with former lieutenants fighting for control of diminished territory. The news should have been a relief, but it only deepened the mystery of the threatening letters. Then who's sending the letters? Lynn wondered as we processed this information. We sat at our small kitchen table, the letters spread out before us like pieces of a puzzle. The answer came from an unexpected source. Desiree, the shelter worker who had helped us in Los Angeles, had maintained a secure email account where I could contact her in emergencies. When I reached out about the letters, her response was immediate and shocking. "It's Amber," she wrote. "She's been tracking you through a private investigator. She blames Lynn for her sister's ode." Apparently, her sister Jasmine started working for Victor after Lynn escaped, taking her place. Amber thinks if Lynn had stayed, her sister wouldn't have been recruited. The revelation hit us both hard. All this time, we'd been running from a ghost, driven by fear of a threat that no longer existed. The real danger had come from an unexpected source, a grieving sister looking for someone to blame. "What do we do now?" Lynn asked, her voice small but steadier than it had been in years. I looked at my daughter, no longer the beaming child of her early years, nor the broken young woman I'd found in Los Angeles, but something new, a survivor, scarred but strong. "We stop running," I said simply. "We build a life here, a real one, and we help others do the same." The decision felt right, a turning point after years of reacting to fear. That was 3 years ago today. Lynn works as a peer counselor at a recovery center, using her experience to guide others through the darkness. She once knew I manage a small bookstore and lead a support group for families of trafficking survivors. We still have our difficult days. Lynn's recovery is ongoing, with occasional setbacks when stress or triggers become overwhelming. I still find myself scanning crowds, checking locks, planning escape routes, but we're no longer defined by fear. Last month, Lynn received her acceptance letter to a master's program in social work as she shared the news. Her smile, bright and genuine, reminded me of the beaming child she once was. "I'm proud of you," I told her, my heart full. "So proud of who you've become." She hugged me tight. "This daughter. I almost lost this woman who fought her way back from hell. We made it, Mom." She whispered against my shoulder. "Against everything, we made it." And in that moment, I knew it was true. We had watched Lynn's life go down the drain, but we had also witnessed her remarkable rise from those depths together. We had reclaimed what Victor and his world had tried to steal: our future, our hope, our capacity to love. We had transformed our pain into purpose, and in doing so, we had found our way. So if you're listening right now, and you feel like the darkness will never lift, if you're hiding from your past or haunted by fear, I want you to remember this. You are stronger than you think. Your story doesn't end in pain. It's just beginning in power. You can rewrite it with every breath you take. And if we could make it, so can you stay strong, stay safe, and when you're ready, choose to stop running and start rising.